but from Gracia, this is the Rorschach, Georgia update from the 13th of March, 2025. Quick summary of what's going down in Georgia. Wednesday the 12th, former Georgian President Misha Saakashvili, who's been in prison since 2021, was sentenced to another 9 years for embezzling 9 million lari, which is over $3 million, through alleged fake expense claims for luxury spending. Saakashvili, who served as president from 2004 to 2013, denies the charges, says the expenses were legitimate. After the verdict, he posted on Twitter, calling it an outrageous case of political persecution. Since sentences in Georgia run concurrently and he's already serving a 6-year sentence for abuse of power, this will prolong his imprisonment by 3 more years. There are 2 more ongoing cases against him, one for entering Georgia illegally in 2021, which led to his capture, and another one for his role in a crackdown on protesters in 2007. After talks held within the Geneva International Discussion Format on the 4th and 5th of March, Russia reminded Georgia about a promise of an apology for the 2008 Russia-Georgia war, which Bidzina Ivanishvili made during the election campaign last year. While Russia appears to be satisfied with a more conciliatory approach of the Georgian dream, or the Kotsebi, still stresses the need for Georgia to make a legal commitment to the non-use of force against its breakaway regions. Eye roll. Meanwhile, the Georgian side maintains that Russia is still failing to uphold the 2008 peace agreement by continuing the militarization of the occupied regions. Russian side also refuses to have any talks about the possibility of people displaced by the conflict return to their homes. On a kind of related issue, on Wednesday the 12th, Oleksiy Reznikov, former Ukrainian defense minister, denied allegations often made by the Kotsebi that Ukraine and Western powers pressured Georgia to open a second front against Russia in Abkhazia and South Ossetia. He called the allegations complete lies and part of Russia's information war. Speaking in an interview with Radio Free Europe, he stressed that Ukraine understands how sensitive the topic of the breakaway regions are for Georgia. He also questioned the military logic of such a move, arguing that a second front in Georgia would last only a few days at best. Reznikov made it clear that during his time in office, no one in Kyiv ever discussed or attempted to pressure Georgia on this subject. Changing topics, Denis Krivoshev, Amnesty International's deputy director for Eastern Europe and Central Asia, gave an interview to Voice of America on Thursday the 6th, where he criticized Georgia's newly passed laws, calling them draconian and unprecedented in scale and speed. He said these laws aim to suppress dissent, restrict independent media, and silence civil society, which of course was their goal. He warned that the government's actions reflected a deliberate policy to crush opposition and violate Georgia's international commitments to human rights. According to Krivoshev, government is tightening regulations on public gatherings, increasing fines, and enabling selective detentions of protesters. He said his organization has documented widespread police brutality, including beatings, denial of legal representation, and arbitrary arrests. On Saturday the 8th, as Georgia celebrated International Women's Day, the Georgian Young Lawyers Association, or GYLA, shared an article warning about the dangerous deterioration of women's rights in the country. GYLA believes that instead of addressing gender-related issues, the government is actively rolling back equality laws and enabling gender-based violence, including sexual harassment. It links this trend to the Kotsebi's growing authoritarianism and human rights violations. As we reported last week, the ruling party is removing terms like gender and gender equality from legislation, distancing Georgia from the Istanbul Convention's standards. Since November 2004, the police have increasingly used sexual harassment, verbal abuse, and physical violence against women protesters. In related news, on Wednesday the 5th, Kristi Pirveli and Barbare Rokita, the 2 female owners of Crab Coffee, which has been providing free tea and coffee for demonstrators on Rustaveli for months, were assaulted, resulting in a fractured tooth for Pirveli and a broken nose for Rokita. In an interview with Radio Liberty, Pirveli recalled that they were in a local market about to head to the protest when a man began verbally assaulting them. When she confronted him, he kicked her in the stomach. She defended herself and the attacker fled the scene. She said the police advised her to retract her report because she also might be found guilty since she fought back. She stated that the police expected her to just lie down and die. The attacker was later detained, but released on bail. Georgia's tightening drug-related legislation. On Tuesday, the 11th, Parliament initiated changes in the Administrative Offenses Code, introducing fines between 500 and 2,000 lari, which is about $180 and $700, or up to 60 days of administrative detention for offenses such as illegal manufacturing, possession, or use of narcotics, or avoiding a test to determine narcotic influence. Committing these offenses will result in restrictions on gun-related rights and suspension of driving privileges for 3 years. Since most of the drug-related offenses are already regulated by criminal law and result in harsh sentences, these changes in the administrative code are most likely targeting personal use of marijuana, which in small quantities is not punishable under criminal law. And of course, there's always the precedent, popular in later Saakashvili years, of planting weed on individuals to get leverage over them via what they call the plea bargaining system, although it had little to do with plea bargaining as practiced in the U.S. Watch out for this being used against protesters in the future. Twice in just over a week, nearly identical incidents occurred on the same spot in the center of Tbilisi. Monday the 3rd, a car speeding across the Metechi Bridge veered off course and fell into the river. The driver did not survive. Just days later, on Tuesday the 11th, another car plunged from the same bridge into the river below. This time, rescue teams managed to pull the driver to safety in time, perhaps because they had already dealt with a similar incident a few days before. On Tuesday, Gogi Saakashvili, the newly appointed ambassador to Belarus, spoke about the need to strengthen ties between Belarusian and Georgian people. After presenting his credentials to President Lukashenko in an official confirmation ceremony, Saakashvili highlighted the positive relations between the two peoples and importance of developing bilateral cooperation during difficult times in the international arena. Lukashenko warmly welcomed the ambassador and had kind words for the Kotzebue, saying that their politics align with Belarus's stance on defending their sovereignty from foreign interference. Of course he did. In an interview with business portal BM.ge, Vakhtang Kandalaki, head of the Georgian Hospitality Fund, discussed the sector's struggles caused by declining tourism and political instability. He highlighted that even during the pandemic, despite all restrictions, economic activity was more robust. In contrast, recent months, especially November and December, saw complete stagnation. Many people now avoid restaurants and hotels, feeling guilty about leisure during the political situation. Kandalaki said businesses face significant challenges, including employee retention and financial obligations to investors and banks. He criticized the government for not taking this situation seriously, saying officials manipulate economic data to create a false sense of stability. On another note, according to the National Statistics Office, direct foreign investment in Georgia totaled $1.3 billion in 2024, a 30% decline compared to 2023. The 3 largest investor countries were the UK, Malta, and the Netherlands. Together, they contributed nearly 60% of all direct foreign investment. Each are well-known jurisdictions of convenience, otherwise known as money laundering havens, each popular with Russian oligarchs. The top 3 industries for investors were the financial and insurance sectors, followed by manufacturing and real estate. They received 64% of all direct foreign investment. Closing with some cultural news, Donald Rayfield, British professor of the Georgian language at Queen Mary University of London and well-known colossus of Georgian and Soviet history, refused an award from Georgia's ruling party. The ceremony was planned in Britain at the Royal Asiatic Society, where Rayfield was set to be honored for his contributions to the Georgian language, literature, and history. The Embassy of Georgia in Britain, the Ministry of Culture, and the Writers' House organized the event. The issue arose when Rayfield declined to accept the award from Ketevan Dumbadze, former Kotzebue MP, current director of the Writers' House. Organizers then offered to have someone else present the award, but Rayfield ultimately rejected it altogether, stating he could not accept an award from Georgia's illegitimate government. Thank you, Professor Rayfield. And that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us. If you have any feedback, send us an email at info@rorschach.com. We want to make our updates better for you. Nachamdis.